Thank you. Thank you, Senator Padilla. Senator Blumenthal.
Not going there. But I am going to make a very non-scientific observation here, at great risk, I must say, because it could lead to unwarranted conclusions. But I would say, looking at the audience in this room and the group waiting outside to get into the room, that the average age of our audience is roughly 1/2 the average age of United States senators.
Senator Blumenthal, we confirm that. I had a show of hands. There's only one in the audience who's over the age of 35.
Which is enormously exciting for me. And I make this statement not out of any ageism, but I guarantee that in China or in many of the other countries that are potential competitors, there are not groups like this one voluntarily pursuing research, innovation, invention in this area and coming all the way from other parts of the country to listen to this kind of proceeding. So I want to thank you all for being here today. And when I thank you, I'm thanking literally thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of young people who are studying this area and who will be the source of invention. And you're right, Ms. Sheridan, AI invention and innovation are flourishing in this country, which should be a source of pride and excitement to my colleagues and myself, which brings me to my first question. A number of experts in the industry have suggested we ought to have some kind of pause on innovation or on the release of new products, put aside the issue of testing them. Even if I thought it were a good idea, I don't. I think the idea of a pause is totally impractical. So let me ask any of you whether you think a pause on AI, I know it's a somewhat simplistic question, is a good idea and even doable.
Well, just to briefly address that, although I think you addressed it yourself a bit, I think the biggest reason a pause would be bad, as Senator Tillis mentioned, is a lot of social good is going to come out of AI, and with the right frameworks in place, predominantly good rather than risk. And pausing it means that we're not going to get this innovation and creativity and value from AI that we otherwise get. On top of which, I don't think you really could enforce a pause. And on top of that, other jurisdictions are not going to similarly pause. So
well, that's my next, unless anybody disagrees, just in the interest of time, I'm going to move to my next question. Yes, sir.
Well, I was just going to say I agree that it would be a bad idea for many of the same reasons, totally unenforceable. Yeah, I could list lots of reasons why it's a bad idea. I don't support the idea of a pause.
And the ones who would love it the most are the Chinese, our competitors in other jurisdictions, as you've said, Mr. Abbott. So it's a bad idea for a lot of reasons, and it's impractical and unenforceable. I want to ask a question because you mentioned the word framework, Mr. Abbott. And in a hearing that Senator Hawley and I had in a different subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee, the Privacy and Tech Committee, we focused a lot on this idea of a new agency, licensing and registration, guardrails and safeguards like maybe what I called a nutrition label, means of distinguishing and stopping deep fakes, audio clones, and so forth. Some of the bad outcomes of AI innovation. I have in mind a framework, probably a new agency, that would not in any way impinge on the current patent system. Do you think that kind of new agency is compatible with our current intellectual property protection system? I'm going to open it to anyone who wants to respond.
Thank you for that question, Senator. I think that we need to use existing regulators to adopt AI regulation with existing authorities as in the short and medium term, but I think also exploring the new agency and new AI agency and its functions is a great idea. I think it'll take time, so I don't think those two recommendations are mutually exclusive, and I think we need to pursue both at the same time.
I'll just say I think it's important to recognize the protections we already have under broader existing frameworks. For example, if a company uses an AI system to make hiring decisions in a manner that discriminates based on a protected characteristic, that would already be unlawful under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So we already have a lot of frameworks that would apply to AI, even though they are not AI specific.
Mr. Abbott.
Just to briefly weigh in on that, I mean, I think you are completely correct that it is the government's responsibility at some level to manage some of these risks for the public, and that having an administrative agency dedicated to that would be helpful. I do think that as a general matter, a technologically neutral approach to the issue is the right way to go. So for example, if we want to, and we do, prohibit discrimination based on protected characteristics, that there are laws that apply to companies doing that, whether you have a human resource manager or an AI system operating to do that sort of thing. You know, so I think in principle, it's a good idea, but very much depends on the details of how it's implemented.
Thank you. Ms. Sheridan or Mr. Salzberg, do you have observations? I'm going a little bit over my time.
Sure, I would agree with the other speakers. I would just add that it's also important that we make sure that there's public sector and private sector collaboration in forming this kind of commission, or at least into the input. Because we also want to make sure that we're not undermining innovation. And I would also add just one more point, which is that there are other agencies like FDA in the case of our industry that are already looking at these issues, and it's very important that they continue to be a part of this. One statistic is that over 100 applications to FDA in 2021 have already contained AI or machine learning components. So they're already looking to these issues, and if we had a new commission, we'd have to make sure there's coordination between those agencies.
Thank you. I'll keep it very briefly. So our CEO has said AI is too important not to regulate, and it's too important not to regulate well. I think our view of regulation is a sectoral approach is appropriate, and when it comes to patents, you know, that would mean the Patent Office kind of handles issues related to patent policy. But we do believe, you know, it's regulation is important.
I welcome all of these comments, and this hearing and the one that my subcommittee did, I regard as just the beginning, and I hope that we can call on all 5 of you and many others to be involved, because we do, to take Mr. Salzberg's point, want to regulate. I think everyone has agreed regulation is necessary, maybe through some kind of federal agency, call it an administrative agency, but we also want to continue to encourage innovation, and the startups and the folks who are in this room who are going to be inventing stuff in their parents' garages. Not to deprecate anybody who's in this room, but as you know, that is a well-founded source of innovation in this country, and we want to make sure that we don't heavy-handedly deprecate or discourage innovation. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal.